Welcome to Dentology, the Business of Dentistry podcast. In this podcast, we delve into the non-clinical aspects of dentistry with inspirational guests from across the profession. You will hear incredible life stories, pick up valuable business tips and be entertained. I'm Andy Acton and I'm joined by my co-host, Chris Drevens. What I love about this podcast is the business of dentistry, and I love that there's no rule book. There's no one path for how you're successful in business. You know, we spoke to Dr. Sam Jethwa, who loves laying stones in front of him, very structured in how he does it. And then you have somebody like Callie Walker, who is quite a free spirit, very entrepreneurial, but prepared to jump into new things without knowing exactly what that plan looks like.
Yeah, no, I thought she was great. It's an interesting one, isn't it? The fact of, in a bizarre way, I hadn't realised she'd been around so long. That makes it sound like she's really old, but do you know what I mean? Her business has been going for nearly 20 years, I think. And, you know, to be able to do Canada, UK, USA, it's a great one because I learned quite a lot. I learned loads from it.
Yeah, likewise. And I'm glad we got to have the conversation about Dental Mavericks, her charity, and the work they do in North Morocco and, you know, helping kids. Because again, you know, we talk often about dentistry is kind of an ecosystem. It's all joined up. And if more people that can find out about it, the more help that they can get for those projects, the better it will be for the kids in that part of the world. And
we even talked about Barbie.
We did talk about Barbie.
Now that's got to be a teaser as well.
Exactly. Yeah, you definitely want to listen to that.
What's that?
If you don't subscribe to our podcast, please do. We release new episodes at 7 o'clock every Monday morning. And yeah, we'd appreciate any feedback you've got on the show. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
So we are now well over the 100 episode mark and going strong.
Can you believe it? 100 plus episodes. It's stunning, really.
Isn't it? Yeah, and the guests.
No wonder my bottom's sore.
We haven't done them all today.
No, that's true.
But the guests keep coming, and today we have an absolute corker. Today we're joined by Callie Walker, and Callie is the founder of Connect My Marketing, which will be interesting, but also the founder of Dental Mavericks, a dental charity, which would be nice to find out more about as well.
After that,
exactly.
Probably not quite. Or Goose.
Exactly.
That'd be Maverick, wouldn't he, on Top Gun?
Oh, was
it?
Yeah. Get your plane.
So
anyway,
welcome, Callie. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, and congratulations on over 100 interviews. It's quite a feat.
Well, we started it.
Can't believe anyone still listens.
I don't know if you remember. You may not remember, or you may not have been aware of it, but there was a thing called Clubhouse, which was an audio-only platform that blew up during lockdown.
Yeah.
And we hopped on Clubhouse, and literally, it was like the sharpest peak you could imagine.
Tuesday night.
It came and
every Tuesday night.
Went within about 3 months.
Yes.
But we enjoyed the conversations, and out of that, we said, wouldn't it be quite nice if we could carry on having these conversations? But doing it live just meant that people had to be around in that moment, which didn't really work for us. And that's what spawned the idea of creating our own podcast. And since then, it's been really good. So we get to speak to interesting people like you, which is lovely.
Yeah. My first question, is Callie short for anything, or is that Callie?
Yes, it is. It's short for Carolyn. I've never been called Carolyn ever, even at school. And the only person that has ever called me Carolyn was my dad when he was angry with me.
Wow.
When I was small, that's it, really. So my brother, is only 11 months difference between me and my brother. And he could never pronounce my name, and he started it.
That was how it started.
Yeah.
Because I've never met another Callie.
No.
Not you've heard of Callie or something, but I was just thinking it's either quite a cool name or it's a cool name that's a shortened version of something else.
Well, I don't know how old you are, but there was a programme.
Older than you.
Blake 7.
Oh, yeah, I do
remember. There's a Callie in there. Yeah, that's the only other one. Yeah.
Oh, wow, there you go. Yeah. Blake 7, you won't remember Blake 7. Yeah. Anyway, even if you did, you wouldn't have watched it. Because it's science fiction. You don't like science fiction.
But yeah, I'm not the biggest science fiction.
It had some of the worst special effects. I think now when I go back in my head, some of those especially of exploding things.
It was a BBC Two special, wasn't it?
It was. But it was I used to quite enjoy it, really.
So whilst we're reminiscing,
we
could reminisce in another way, which is there a time back in your own childhood, Callie, that you can pinpoint and say this is the reason why you're sitting here today? How was your childhood, and were you always destined to be the person you are, or are you kind of a work in progress?
Well, I can pinpoint a person in my life that pushed me, which was it's a strange story, but my uncle Billy, who my son's named after, he used to breed Exmoor ponies in Bingley, and he used to say to me, if you can master a horse, you can master anything. And I used to go riding on his farm where his horses were kept, and he had a really evil mare called Cleo, and all the kids were scared of her. And he used to make me go into the stable and feed her and groom her, even though she kicked and bit everybody. And he did it because he wanted me to get rid of the fear of her, because the horse, obviously, as you know, would kind of like smell the fear. Yeah. Mm. And that was, because I was thinking about this, that was kind of like one of the pivotal things for me of feeling the fear and having to do it, if that makes sense, because I didn't really have a choice because I respected him so much and I wanted to please him. But it also gave me that kind of like, my favourite feeling is nervous excitement. Right. You know, that kind of like coming on this podcast excited, a little bit nervous, but excited about it. So that's kind of, that is a big pivotal moment, or a time when he would make me do things.
Right. Yeah. And so you say you're from Leeds, so you were brought up in the north of England?
Yeah.
Right, okay. And what was it, well, we'll come to where you are, because you're not in the UK anymore, are you? You're based in Malaga.
Yeah.
So what was your kind of pathway through from, have you been working with dentists for decades? Is it a fairly new thing? How did you end up sort of supporting dentists in the way that you do?
How did you get to what you do, I suppose, is where we're coming from.
Yeah, so I'll kind of like jump into the entrepreneurial journey. I think that's kind of important because it kind of brings me to where I am now. But my first real serious role was a startup for a company called JCT 600 based in Bradford, and they set up a leasing department. And
so they're cars, aren't they?
Yeah, they do like high-end cars, and all sorts now. They're massive. But when I was working with them, it was a startup, and there was myself and 4 other people in this leasing company. So I got really good grounding on a startup from the beginning with really strong entrepreneurial managers around me. Mm-hmm. And then I did enjoy that role, but from a quite an early age, I had a really high salary and a good company car, great health insurance. But when you're in your early 20s, that kind of stuff doesn't mean very much. And I really struggled in a corporate environment as an individual. A lot of my friends were creative, and there was a big scene in Leeds happening in the 90s where bars and restaurants were opening, and it was becoming a really cool place to be. And I wanted in. So I'd had a mortgage from sort of late teens, early 20s, and I decided to remortgage my house. I think I was about 24 or 25, and I built a bar called the Soul Kitchen in Leeds. And I had that for around 5 years, nearly died, to be honest, because I just became an alcoholic. I just loved it, but I loved, all the
drink your profits, isn't that what they say?
Don't drink the profits, but I did anyway. But it was there for a purpose, because I got it out of my system. I scratched the itch.
Yeah.
And then from that, obviously, I met my ex-partner Tony, and we got together. And then I didn't have an income, so I decided to set up a marketing company, which was called Brainstorm Training, and it was a skills gap government-funded marketing company whereby we were training NVQs for skills gaps within the industry for hospitality, and that was a big cash cow. So then what happened is I got pregnant with twins, and I had the twins in Leeds, which Clarendon were amazing. They were prem, they were in hospital for 3 months. My son was quite sick, and it was quite a trying time. And when they came out of hospital, Leeds then became a really difficult place to have 2 young babies with the weather, and suddenly you've gone from being an entrepreneur to being at home with 2 babies, and I felt really claustrophobic. So then we came over to Spain, which was 19 years ago, and the government funded just stopped on the NVQ's marketing company. It just finished, as government funding does sometimes. And my ex-partner went to America to see a marketing guy who was doing marketing courses for dentists at that time. And I know it's a bit of a strange jump, but we decided it was at the time when the funding was starting to be pulled from the NHS, so there was more dentists going into private clinic. And that's kind of how my journey started. And then it started off as consultancy, and then it went into products, into websites, social media. We split up, I think, 6 years ago, and then 3 years ago, I then founded Connect My Marketing. I'm jumping quite a lot here, so you probably have to go back, but then that's when it brought me into America and Canada and the UK, existing in the UK as well. So that's kind of where it stemmed from.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why Malaga?
Because my auntie and uncle had an apartment here, which we ended up buying actually.
Okay, right. So
and they've had it for 27 years, so it's kind of a family apartment. It's now an Airbnb apartment, and I absolutely love Malaga. Have you been?
Yes.
Yeah, the city is just amazing, isn't it?
I enjoyed it. I mean,
I just love Malaga. I think it's just one of those beautiful, best-kept secrets. And it's just, again, I've seen that change a lot in 18 years. But I go a lot of travelling, and it honestly is one of my favourite cities. Yeah.
So when you rocked up 18 years ago, you and ex-partner didn't have a job?
Not really, no.
Wow.
No.
Flip.
We came with a credit card. Because we couldn't sell our house. We did have a house in the UK, but we couldn't sell it because the housing market at that time was pretty poor. Took a couple of years to sell that. And then in the end, when we sold that, we ended up buying the apartment that we rented off my auntie.
Wow, wait.
So when you said your partner went to America and saw a dental marketing course, when was that?
Sorry?
When was that? What
that
year
would
was
have been, 19 years ago. So I don't know. I'm not
early 2000s.
Yeah.
So new contract was 2006.
I'm going to go for 2004 actually, because the twins would have been about 10, 11 months old then.
And that's why I was just linking it to that, only from the point of view that obviously in the UK, a new NHS contract came in 2006,
right?
And that did spawn quite a lot of dentists then starting to do more private treatment. So your timing,
was,
possibly
great.
Whether it was by design or luck, I don't know. But identifying a marketing course then would have been really good timing and positioning for all the dentists who perhaps weren't going to commit to the NHS.
There was so much talk about redesigning it for that couple of years before. So that's probably about the time that you were then musing on what you might be doing. No, interesting.
And then obviously, you know, dentistry is very, it's a very different type of industry to be in, and it takes I think a lot of care and passion to understand the character of dentists.
Oh, definitely,
and that's kind of, it's not, we saw with COVID lots of different people becoming consultants and changing path, but it's not, it's quite a cynical market as well, because especially in the States, dentistry is, it's people are passionate that are in this particular industry, and they want quality, they want trust, they want credibility, and that's kind of one of the things that you have to learn, and it takes time, I think.
I think probably early doors as well, especially when you were starting. Marketing was, sales is still not a great word for dentists, but marketing would probably be, what do you mean I have to do marketing? Doesn't that diminish my responsibility and my position as a dentist?
Totally.
I thought you had to sort of overcome, not only trying to sell a service that they need, but actually before you even get to that point, you've got to overcome their negativity towards what you want to do. In most cases, every company accepts there's marketing, doesn't it?
But also, it was the earliest days of digital marketing. That was kind of a term that wasn't in common language back then, was it? It was adverts in newspapers and leaflet jobs.
Yeah, well, when was Facebook started?
Wasn't it, back then?
2011 or something? 2014?
Facebook was earlier than that, wasn't it? Facebook was 2003, 2004.
Oh, was it? Was it Instagram?
Instagram was later.
Yeah. So how's it? So you obviously got clients in the UK, America, and Canada. So and do you only operate in the dental space, or do you operate in just purely in dentistry? So how has it come about that you've ended up with clients? Because that's quite unusual to have a sector niche, but also cover different jurisdictions. So how's that come about?
And it has been a steep learning curve, and I did actually take a business course on American business culture before I actually entered that market, because it's a completely different animal. And also what I do love about working in the US is that they're very abundant with referrals, in terms of, if you guys are brilliant, they want you to be with all their contacts. And so it is a very high referral business and a lot of networking. And I do enjoy that side of business as well. But a completely different market in terms of how we are in the UK to how we are in the US and how we are in Canada. But I was invited into a networking group. That's how it began. And from there, you know, you have to then prove yourself, don't you, with everything. You know, nothing's easy in life. And I have an amazing team that I work with. I mean, I put everything down to the team. I can be the visionary and I can be the networker and the front and do everything that's needed. But the team that I work with, they're amazing. And I mean that.
They make you look good.
Yeah, they do. Exactly.
Same as ours.
And
Same as
better
ours.
than me at
They make us
everything.
look like we know what we're doing.
Oh, of course they do. Of course they do.
Yeah.
So I imagine the work setup that you've got, you weirdly were probably quite well placed for COVID, because working remotely, that probably didn't present you with as many challenges as it did others.
Well, we do have an office here, so there's 12 of us in this office.
Right.
But to be honest, with COVID, we actually, I don't know how to say this without, I don't want it to sound like it dismissive of it, but we made the decision at the beginning of COVID that we weren't going to close and go on furlough. We decided that we were going to do the best we could for the clients that we had. And and especially with social media, and also our clients were in a state of fear, as everybody was, because dentistry was treated really badly, as obviously you guys know. And we decided to do community projects through social media. So, for example, we got all our clients to call all their patient list over the age of 55 to check that they needed shopping or they were okay. Just things that have nothing to do with dentistry. And we did, some of our clients did training. I mean, they weren't allowed to work within the dental practice, but we did other things instead. And when the lockdown was finished, they became pillars of their own community, most of our clients. And so we
because
took that
of the way
decision.
they treated their patients through that period.
Through that period. And the referrals that they got, they just all went crazy. And the other thing I think is that...
Yeah, very nice.
That's a nice one.
Yeah, and doing shopping for older people and
that's a great one,
and food banks and things like that. But I think, you either come from a place of fear and love, don't you, with everything. With COVID, I could not have sat at home on furlough. I couldn't have done it because just having conversations with clients and the fear initially was just taking action felt better than sitting at home worrying.
Out of interest, obviously in the UK, dental practices had to shut from the 23rd of March to the 8th of June, and they sort of found out when the daily ticker tape went across the bottom of the screen in the Prime Minister's briefing, which I'd say was pretty appalling. What was the situation in America and Canada? Were they forced to close for a period of time as well?
Yeah, but each state was different, obviously, because it's such a vast place. Right. So every state was different, and there were different politics within every state as well. But it just depended on that circumstance. And then because you've got such a vast area, everybody's got different opinions as well. So I think globally everybody had a hard time with it, didn't they? But it's just what can you do within your remit that's important. I always feel.
Yes. Yeah. And in terms of the work you do with dentists, some of the other things that you've talked about and you've done before, you seem to lean very heavily towards data, data-driven marketing, and why that's important. What sort of data should dentists be looking at? What data is important when we're sort of talking in a marketing sense? Yeah,
so I won't go into the digital marketing on my side. I'll give you something that your listeners can have that they can implement internally, which is easy for them to take away. Because from a digital marketing perspective, we're looking at different variables, different ads and so on, and campaigns. But there are 3 areas that all dental or business owners should focus on in terms of if they're spending externally on marketing. The first one is, does that marketing campaign make the phone ring? And if it makes the phone ring, when the phone's rung, does the person who's answering the phone know how to speak to that patient and get them to book in? The next stage is if the booking, did they turn up? Because that's important, because there's things you can do in between. And then when they turn up, are they moving forward for the treatment or getting the right advice to move forward for treatment or register as a new patient? So they're the sort of like the key areas internally what all business owners really should be looking at. There's lots of variables I know in that, but one of the biggest things that we find and the hardest things to change is spending external money on marketing, websites or whatever, and then we mystery shop all our clients. We've got some clients who mystery shop weekly. They want us to mystery shop them weekly. Wow. And, you know, knowing that, I believe that every patient should be treated the same. You know, regardless who answers the phone, they should get the same treatment, the same compassion. We also monitor phobics as well, so we're really heavily into phobic marketing. So we watch how a phobic would watch a video on a website and how long it would take them, how many hours they'd spend on the website before they pick the phone up or fill out a web form. And it's 2 to 3 hours with some phobic conversations. We'd then record the call and listen. And then if the person on reception is not showing empathy or at least sounding like they've got time for them, then you know that knowing the history of that person's journey to actually pick that phone up is kind of the bit that we really focus on. So that data is important.
When we used to do courses, we would sort of say to people, you spend all this money on making the phone ring and then you don't answer it properly, you know, or the woman on reception says, oh, hang on, can you hold on a minute? It's like,
and then they're gone for 6 minutes.
I was just to say that thing about that training, and as a marketeer, it's hard because you can come up with the most creative campaign in the world that will get email clicks or the phone to ring or ads, but if the person at the other end isn't trained and, you know, prepared and well equipped to deal with those inquiries, the whole thing falls down. In fact, it's even worse, isn't it? Because they've gone from having a neutral view of your business to a negative view of your business based on the person.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, the great thing from my end is that, you know, if the marketing's going really well, it's never the marketing company, it's always the team. And if it's going bad, it's always our fault. So that's why we invest that time and training in from the start, from the minute someone clicks that campaign or whatever that marketing campaign is, through to actually going forward for treatment. And like you said earlier, it isn't about sales. It's about offering your menu of services that you know, I've just found out my dentist here does airflow, and I love airflow, and I didn't even know. And I've been going through that horrible hygiene appointment, and I was like, you do airflow? Like, you know, just tell your patients what you do.
We were speaking to a dentist earlier on. He's quite prolific on Instagram, and he was talking about how that's been good for business. What's your take on that? You've got clients all over the planet. Do they engage with it? Do they truly understand the power of it?
Instagram.
Or just generally social media?
Social media.
Do your clients kind of engage with it in a strategic sense as opposed to just see it as a thing they do?
Yeah, so this is quite a really good question actually, because one of the things that's important Instagram's the biggest platform. Dentists love Instagram, obviously, for obvious reasons, before and afters and all the rest of it.
They're getting into TikTok as well, aren't they?
Yeah,
more turning up on TikTok as well.
Yeah, I love TikTok. You know, I've just had a strategy meeting today with TikTok because I personally, from a personal perspective, love it because I like the educational side of it. But TikTok's got a bad rep in terms of the dances and all that. And so for me,
I thought you were going to tell me Callie does dancing. I thought I love TikTok. I love dancing in Malaga.
But yeah, Instagram's definitely the biggest platform, and you know, strategy is important. Don't do social media if you don't have a strategy. Don't do it just because you feel that you should turn up on social media, because it's pointless. You know, are you looking for followers? Are you looking to, you know, increase, direct messages? You know, and there's lots of variables on posting, as you know, with stories and reels and all the rest of it. Yeah. So it's a massive part of, like you just said, when we started, it was direct mail, adverts in papers, leaflet drops. Now all that is kind of like it's more or less purely digital.
And how do your UK clients fare to your US and Canadian clients? Are we ahead of the pack, behind the pack? Pretty much, it's much of a muchness.
So I would, from a clinical perspective, in terms of what's out there clinically, in terms of resources, I'd say America has more choice and more opportunities for buying different. They're ahead of the curve on. Sorry, I'm trying to think of the right word on gadgets.
That works. Technology. How about
Technology.
Yes. Although gadgets.
We knew exactly what you meant. We were there. Gadgets.
Like with a wand or something. But on the flip side, from a marketing perspective, and I've had this conversation, most of our UK clients have treatment coordinators, and I'm talking about my own clients now. So we've worked with them heavily, but that's not something obvious. Most still the clinicians in America still mainly do their own conversions. So in terms of taking treatment conversions. So that's a big opening for the US. But it is, when I say the market's different, it's kind of that would be my big standout, is the way that they take in a patient and walk through those.
I've got two questions
stages.
which sort of are linked, but maybe not. So, so when you started in 2004, whatever it is, did you find that, say, the US was more advanced than the UK? Has there become less divergence, and are you able to use sort of almost like ideas from one part of the globe to another part? I know there's sometimes things that just don't work. I saw there's quite a few questions in there, but I think it's quite fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's I've only been working in the States for the last 2.5 years, so that's quite a new market for me. Sorry. But to answer the question about does one thing work for one person and one thing for another, I personally think that from a marketing perspective, all prospects and patients work off emotion. So the wording absolutely 100% is going to be different because we do Americanize something that definitely wouldn't work in the UK. You mentioned earlier about the sales and profit and that aspect. I wouldn't use that terminology with an English market, but I would 100% use it in a US market. And also the marketing is much more aggressive.
Right.
So it's much more price. I know there are some price point marketing, but I personally prefer trusting credibility as a marketing exercise rather than competing on price. It's the race to the bottom.
Yeah.
So, but in the American market, I would say that in places like Miami and places that are more condensed with dentists, practices or offices, that the aggression on the marketing's completely different, and it definitely wouldn't work in the UK.
Wow.
Yeah,
it is. It's interesting then that you had to, because they're dental offices, aren't they?
Yes.
Not dental practices.
So that's another.
It's just interesting that you sort of have to have even the different terminology.
Yes.
So is that you can relate. Yeah. And is there difference between Canada and the US? Is Canada more UK or more US or sort of on its own?
The experiences that I've had, I'd say they're more North American. I would definitely say more North American, yeah. And also, there's a lot more standards to meet in terms of advertising and marketing in Canada, which are completely different. So there's no GDPR in the US and Canada, but there are quite high standards. In areas of Canada, we can't use testimonials or before and afters.
Really?
So we have to be quite, strategic.
Yeah. You were saying about the US about it being very price driven, and they are. Yeah, I've been to the States a fair few times, and their billboard adverts. Lawyers will call out other lawyers by name.
Yes.
Basically say they're rubbish. Come to me.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't be able to do that, would you?
No. But and it's just not very British either.
And you wouldn't do it anyway, even if you could.
But do you see in the UK? Do you see kind of culture and values starting to come through in their marketing campaigns over and above just what they can offer as a dental practice?
In the UK?
Yeah.
100%. I mean, we've worked on this for probably about over a decade as a business, as a marketing company. If all my culture culture for me is marketing. So and going back to social media, your question about Instagram, I'm more interested in humanizing you and your team than I am about what type of treatments you do, because yes, it's a given. I'm also interested in about what your Google reviews look like as a business and what they say about your team. I'm not interested in whether you're clean or whether you've got a tidy practice, because that's a given too. And I think that's a big struggle as well. We're heavily getting into the AI conversation at the moment, but if you don't jump on the digital marketing bandwagon and get going, and if you feel out, TikTok a great example, if you don't feel that you're the right person to front it, then get a team member to do it, but don't not do it. Because I know across globally excellent clinicians that are struggling because they haven't digitally marketed themselves,
and I think
or they
once
don't
you
have a
start to
footprint.
fall behind, it's hard.
Yeah, and it's upsetting.
You're playing catch up.
I feel sorry for them. I do.
And then you kind of don't really know where
to
to start. Yeah. Where do you see marketing going? We've been sort of talking about like the history with leaflets and newspaper ads, and the present day with social media, and you sort of touched on AI. Where do you think marketing's heading?
I'm really excited about the AI conversation, because we're all our team are in full training at the moment. We've just invested in some software. We're heavily into it. For me, what I like about the AI conversation is that the biggest fear that, again, going from fear or love, the fear that people have is that obviously we're going to be bombarded with a lot of AI on the internet. But going back to being genuine, because AI isn't artificial, it's put in there by somebody. So checking sources when you're given information is going to be important, marketing or not. These AI images are great, but people aren't stupid. What's AI generated and isn't. So humanization is going to be much more important, and being genuine is going to be much more important, and trust and credibility are going to become more important. So again, don't sit back on AI. You've got to jump into it and be on ChatGPT. You've got to learn about it, because as a marketing company, we had a meeting 2 days ago. We will quickly become a dinosaur if we don't jump into this conversation and envelop it. So so just going back to your question, we're grabbing lots of different softwares and using them and getting involved in them, and we're enjoying it. We're coming from a passionate place and not a fearful place.
Good for you. Good for you. Yeah. It's nice to hear you've got that approach, because we were actually talking to a guy earlier on today about AI and where it's going. And like you say, you kind of, it feels like a similar emotion, but you go from excited and terrified.
Yeah.
It's not far from getting from one place to another, but it's nice to hear somebody who's genuinely excited about it and the opportunities it's going to bring.
It's not all Skynet.
It's not. And, the thing is, this data mining and all the stuff that people are frightened of, at the end of the day, you'll have heard this before, but we're walking around with a phone that Google's listening to all the time if you don't turn your settings off, It's over is all that. You're walking around with yourself in your mobile phone. And the other important thing about AI as well is, for me, does it add value to the client, and does it create capacity within my business? That's the two areas that I'm interested in. And AI does both of those things. So, for example, blog posts, we're having those written at the moment and proofed. If we can develop a good structure for writing AI SEO granted blog posts, we can do 2 or 3 a month for a client instead of 1 or 2. We can do more, not less.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just to sort of change tack for a bit.
That's a tricky one. So I was just thinking on that, because then the tricky part is you get desensitized to it.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? It's that whole, I think, what was it Oliver saying, that we get 6,000 or 10,000 almost adverts a day or something. It's scary, really.
Yeah. Someone was saying to me the other day, if you're going to write a book, do it now, because if you write a book and you have it published, then is, it's good. It's good to get that book out as quickly as possible, because that's kind of something that you're not going to trust things anymore, and that's why it's important to know your source.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's and that's a concern for lots of people, isn't it? Between what's real and what isn't real.
Well, it's a bit like, isn't it, that bizarrely, and it's a bit of an abstract jump, but when watching that ABBA Voyage thing, I always used to say, well, unless I see it with my own eyes, I won't believe it. But after going to see that Avatar show, it's now, if I can touch it, then I probably know it's true, because they look so real. Yeah. It's just like mad.
Just seeing
really.
It.
Deep fake, all that sort of stuff.
Isn't enough. Just to change tack for a bit, in the intro, I said that you were the founder of Dental Mavericks. What's Dental Mavericks?
So Dental Mavericks is a volunteer-led charity, and we work predominantly in Morocco. And we work in basically for children that don't have access to any dental care. Our goals basically are always, long-term oral hygiene care, mid-term goal, fluoride treatment every 6 months. And then short-term goals is we do between 6 and 8 projects a year, and we go and take children out of dental pain. So it's an emergency clinic. But on the back of that, we've just got funding through a beautiful dentist called Nav, and he's been raising money for us in memory of his daughter, who sadly died, and we're about to build a clinic in the province of Chefchaouen, which will be open on a daily basis. So that's really a really exciting project coming up.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Why Morocco?
Well, Morocco is. I live in Malaga, and Morocco geographically is a half hour on a boat, basically. Yeah. We also work in Lebanon, but I don't take volunteers to Lebanon because it's obviously quite a dangerous place to go. But we also fund orphanages in Beirut as well. And they're kind of the 2 places, but 80% predominantly is Morocco.
Wow,
brilliant!
Yeah.
Brilliant. So before the facility that NAV's funding, do you require clinicians to volunteer their time to go to Morocco to treat the kids and then come back? Right.
Yeah, so the trips are usually about 1 week, and we do 5 days clinic in that week. And we work in the Atlas Mountains, the Rif Mountains, and a town called Essaouira, which is the gateway to the Sahara Desert. So 3 specific areas. We also team up with local governments and another charity called the Eve Branson Foundation, which is the mother of Richard Branson, who we've been working with for 10 years in the Atlas. And then in Essaouira, another local government. So we're working with Moroccan ground teams. And we've got a lot of history there. We're 13 years in. So we're very well, I'd say, grounded, connected, and all the kids that we treat, we're treating them from kindergarten through to 16.
Wow. I mean, this is quite a significant CSR project. What was the kind of the spark to start doing this those 13 years ago? Why was it that you felt that this was something you wanted to do?
I'm just trying to think of the book. I read a book called Emotional Intelligence, and it goes through each decade of your life, and when you hit your 40s, you're predominantly thinking about giving back. Like lots of people start doing yoga, don't they? And they start they start doing fundraising and stuff in the 40s. And apparently it's to do with this emotional intelligence. It's Simon Golding. I was trying to think of the author. And reading that book was the beginning of it. And I think at the time, we were trying to get into help other charities at the time, and there wasn't really a need. I think we offered our marketing services, or we offered time or whatever. Right. And in the end, we thought, we had a friend as well in Malaga who went to Morocco a lot. He had a bike company doing Enduro bikes, and he took us to a place called El Jabbar, and they had one dentist for 150,000 kids. And it was kind of like, well, why don't we just do it here? Because it's geographically perfect and it's easy to get to from the UK. Right, that's how it was born. And then we took 6 clients, just sent them a letter and said, do you fancy coming? And the first trip was horrendous. Like we had no equipment, and it was really naive and badly run. And then it just fell from there, really. Yeah.
Wow, what a great project!
Actually,
it was an adventure charity that turned into more serious stuff.
Could you perhaps let us have a link to the website and details? We can drop it in the show notes, because there may well be UK dentists or dental professionals that might have capacity to get involved and help in some way or other.
Thank you. Yes.
Brilliant. Oh, fantastic! Yeah. You've had an incredibly diverse entrepreneurial career, from the pub to the bar, to setting up the business there and setting up the charity that works out of Morocco. What's the one thing that you would take if you had to pass on one message to other people about your entrepreneurial journey? What's the key takeaway from your own experience?
I think, consistent persistence, I think, is, being an entrepreneur is quite lonely, and it can actually be, it can take years sometimes. You just feel like you're joyless striving, or you're on the hamster wheel and you're not getting anywhere. But I think if you believe in yourself and you believe, and you get up and you work hard as well, and you create a good team and you focus on your team and your culture, and this consistent persistence of just keeping on that level and making sure people feel secure in the role, they're developed. I do 18 years I've done one-to-ones, 10 minutes a month, every month with each team member. Never failed. It still works now. So communication, people know where you're going, and that's more than one thing, isn't it? But, that consistent persistence of delivering and being who you are and doing what you say you are, that's the key thing. And just don't give up. Yeah. If you believe in it, don't give in. It comes eventually. Yeah.
I think what's interesting is, I think that's the life of an entrepreneur. It is a mixed bag. It's doing a lot of things, keeping lots of plates spinning, and keeping lots of things on the go at once, isn't it?
And it can be exhausting, and especially when you get in your 30s and you have kids.
Yeah.
Because you've got that to contend with, and obviously a relationship and all the rest of it, but it's just digging in. And if you've got a good team, they'll look after you when the ship's rocky. They won't if they don't like you.
Yeah.
No, it's right.
Also,
they really won't.
But that thing about the resilience as well, isn't it? Because it's, you have a vision, but there's times when nobody else can see it. So believing, that thing you were saying about focus and the persistence of just believing in what you're doing and making sure that everybody keeps kind of staying with you for it.
Yeah, and as entrepreneurs, we fall in love with things that are our own ideas, and we get a little bit like, and you expect everyone to come along, with it. So you've got to always have buy-in, always.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The flip side of that question is, what's the worst bit of advice you've ever had?
The worst what, sorry?
The worst bit of advice you've ever had.
I think really I think from a financial point of view, I think, I don't have regrets. I don't go down the regret thing, but from a financial point of view, I've never, because it's not because of the charity, but I've always been led by experience and travel. And I've kind of done my things the wrong way around. Whereas now, I'm in my 50s now, and I'm really focused on making sure that I'm financially secure, which is going obviously well now. But I should have really focused that on a little bit earlier. So really what I probably should have done is started Dental Mavericks now and done the other bits. So I've done it back to front a little bit. That's kind of that's one of the bits of advice to myself that I would probably go, actually, but then again, I wouldn't have had the energy.
Yeah, or the experience.
So
there's probably, I imagine there's thousands of kids in Morocco that would disagree as well.
Yeah, totally. So and life experience, it's all about that, isn't it? It's not about
there's probably people, I always think this is fantastic, the fact that you've no idea how you touch people during your lives. In your 5 years in your bar, you don't know the people that came into your bar, how they might still remember your bar, or relationships are formed. I think there's so many of those things that we have absolutely no idea. It's a bit like when you're on holiday and someone takes a picture of, and you happen to be in the background, and then in 40 years' time, you're in someone's life. I find that always quite fascinating.
Yeah, I do actually get sometimes some people on Facebook, and because we all age, obviously, and it's nearly 20 odd years ago, and then I'm like, oh, who is that? And they're like, Jamaica.
Do you remember me in the bar?
Callie, we always finish up with our guests in the same way. So we have two questions for you, and the first one is: you're a fly on the wall. Where are you? What's that situation? What room are you in? What's happening?
Right, so I really had to give this some thought because I'm quite a nosy person. But I've just finished Gold Dust Woman, which is all about Stevie Nicks. Right. And one of the best bits about the book was the making of the Rumours album. Do you like Fleetwood Mac?
Yeah, they're great band.
So it was all about the breakup of Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham, and how all those songs were written about, and how they were all arguing and taking copious amounts of cocaine, and the chaos must have been crazy. But just a fly on the wall in that studio, because it just sounded like, crazy chaos. But out of that amazing album, it's one of my all-time favourite albums, and that came out of it. And I've just been listening to it the last couple of days, so I think that would have been a good fly-on-the-wall experience.
It's funny, isn't it, how many songs or albums, when you understand the situations that they were in, at that time, you know, the music makes more sense, but you can really understand those emotions that go into it. It's quite remarkable.
I don't know how they kind of like even, a breakup outfit could even like be in the same room. I don't think they could, maybe. I don't know. But
it's ABBA, I suppose, isn't it? Another ABBA reference. Yeah, but, it's that sort of thing. Yeah. I remember when watching something about the Beatles, and they were saying, even when they all knew they were going to sort of go their own ways, they still were making music. And I just think that's amazing that in a way that creativity almost transcends. Yeah, it's almost like they want a greater good. I know that sounds a bit naff, but you know what? They want to create something special. Yeah. So they almost park their own pissed offness with each other to create that something special.
It matters so much.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
And who would you meet, Callie, if you were given the opportunity to meet somebody?
Right, so this was my hardest one because this went on and on and on. But I'm going to go for someone who's a little bit more in the moment, and it's obviously got to be a woman, which is Greta Gerwig, the director of Barbie. Right. She's just hit $1 billion on that. But what I am going to say is that I did go to see the movie this week. And obviously I'm from, a time when Barbie wasn't a great kind of role model for women. It was kind of a bit sexist. And so I found the movie just completely, I felt a bit sorry for the men actually in the movie. It was all, I liked it, but it kind of really confused me. And I thought she was really clever having all the people from sex education in there, which the English market. Right, but when I came in to speak to, we've got a Gen Z in our team, and I came in and we have a huddle and I mentioned it. And she went, you've got it wrong. She said, it's all about how fragile the male ego can be and how it doesn't need to be on the back of women. And I was like, but there were no strong role models for men. She went, well, Ken was because he got over that. And I was like, that's it. But I was a bit disturbed by the movie, I think, because I'm just so used to not having that kind of like feeling from it, So I thought she was clever, but I'm going to go with her because that's a massive achievement.
I've not seen the film, but on the basis of that, with that insight, I should probably go and see it.
But I've heard the soundtrack's very good.
Yeah, yes, it is.
Really?
Yeah, supposedly the soundtrack's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
that wasn't like a taking a piss.
No.
By all accounts, the soundtrack is very, very good.
Okay.
And it's very funny. Brilliant. Yeah, if you go in with an open mind, and of course we all got dressed up in pink, and we went the whole
on. I think I'm going to wait until it comes to Netflix.
Because you don't want to get dressed up in pink, or
what do you mean not dressed in pink? I've got a pink shirt on today.
You're Barbie ready.
I am. In a Barbie world.
That was wonderful. I think you've done a lot of stuff. I think you are a true entrepreneur. The way you move and twist and dive into new markets and make those leaps of faith without necessarily knowing where you're going to land. But you do land, which is good. And genuinely, like I said, I think the Dental Mavericks work sounds really important. So do let us have the link for that.
I will.
And we'll drop it in the group and we'll see if we can help on that side, which would be great. But no, thank you for your time today. It's been really good.
It's been brilliant. Thank you.
Nice to meet you both. Thank you for inviting me.
Not at all.
Our pleasure.
Cheers, Callie. Keep well.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Dentology, where we discuss the business of dentistry. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe where you found this episode. That would be amazing. And also follow us on Instagram.